We are ready to go with a full lap.
This Formula 1 car, which weighs less than a Maruti Swift, costed about $135 million to build. That's enough money to fund two Chandrayaan 3 missions to moon, buy more than 40 Bugattis and build an entire 50-story building. Now imagine spending all that money only to watch your investment smash into the walls at 200 miles an hour. Every race weekend, drivers smash this multi-million dollar vehicle, yet every year, teams are spending over $500 million knowing they're probably never even going to win. So is this some sick twisted game that billionaires play for fun by burning their cash, or is there actual genius business model hidden behind? I wanted to find out. So today, let's understand the hidden business model behind F1. Let me take you back in August 13, 1998. At the Belgium Grand Prix, an unpredicted rain has just turned the whole circuit wet. As the green light goes out, a 22-car grid accelerated down the circuit into literal walls of grey water. What happened next is one of the most expensive 15 seconds in F1 history. Car after car started piling up at racing speed. And in matter of seconds, 13 car worth millions of dollars has been completely destroyed. And this was all happening while their owners and sponsors watched their multi-million dollar investment get ripped off in parts while sitting at the pit walls. And this is the risk that these teams take every race weekend. So why would anybody be thinking that this $1 million gamble is a smart business decision? And to understand one of the most complex businesses on earth, let's zoom out a little bit and understand how Formula 1 Group generates in revenue. In 2025, F1 generated about $3.87 billion in revenue. And this has nothing to do with money coming from the teams, this is purely the revenue generated by Formula 1 brand. So where does this 3.87 billion even come from? Just like a perfect pit stop, it has four key components. First is the media rights, which makes up the largest single source of income, which is 31% of the revenue at $1.21 billion. It includes fees paid by global TV networks and streaming platforms for the right to show the race on their channels. Second comes the race promotion fees, which makes about 26% in revenue or roughly $1 billion. These are paid by circuit owners and local government for the privilege to host F1 race in their city. It can range up to $20 to $57 million per race. Next are the sponsorship, which is about 21% and makes about $840 million in revenue. These are the brands we see covered all over the racetrack like Rolex, DHL and Aramco. And rest comes from other sources like licensing, merchandising, logistics and hospitality experiences. So now that we know how F1 earns money, we need to know where it gets spent. Unlike many other sports, a major part of this revenue is redistributed among the teams, which in 2025 was 36% or $1.4 billion. And this distribution is not like every team gets equal 10% of the pie type situation, but it is governed by the Concord Agreement, signed by the teams, the FIA and the F1, where the money get redistributed among the teams according to how well each team does at the end of the season and also how long your team has been in the Formula 1. So a team like Ferrari straight up gets 5% of the stake just because they have been the longest participant in the F1 history, and rest of the money get distributed among every team according to the past and recent performances, with top teams getting over $200 million and worst performing teams still getting about $60 million. And once you stack sponsorship and other income on top of that guaranteed prize money, even the bottom tier team in F1 pulled in around $150 to $240 million in total revenue in 2025. And that sounds like a lot until you realize how much these teams have to spend to race. Prior to 2021, there were actually no rules on how much each team can spend. So some of these teams were spending over $400 to $500 million a year on drivers, factories, hundreds of employees, and of course, the car itself. Back then, the richest teams can simply outspend smaller teams on the grid just to gain a tiny advantage. In fact, the top teams were spending over $55 to $70 million a year on just the drivers. Until 2020, it got so toxic that they were losing hundreds of $1 million every single year just to stay competitive. That's why in 2021, FIA introduced a budget cap of $145 million, and since then it has decreased to $135 million. So now you might ask, if teams like Red Bull and Ferrari still spend about $55 to $70 million in 2025 on just the drivers, how they are able to afford the development of the car and salaries of top executives like the CEO and the team principal. Turns out this $135 million cap does not include driver's salary and the payment of top 3 executives or marketing expenses. So, yes, there is some control on spending, but rich teams can still comfortably outspend smaller teams in every uncapped area. So, if I am a billionaire and tomorrow I want to start my own F1 team, can I still do that? Interestingly, it's not as easy as it looks. Formula 1 is designed to be exclusive. Before you even touch the racetrack, you have to pay a massive $450 million in anti dilution fee just to get a spot on that grid. And this is exactly what Cadillac paid in 2025 to become the 11th team on the grid. And that money gets split among the existing 10 teams as compensation for the fact that your presence reduces their share from the prize money. Second comes the cost of facilities, design offices, and wind tunnels where you are going to develop and test your F1 models. That would cost you another 100 to 200 million dollars. Third is the car itself, which is capped around 135 million dollars. And this is the money that you have to pay even before you hit the racetrack. And don't forget to add operating expense till you actually perform better and get a major share of the prize money. Now this raises an obvious question. If running an F1 team costs this much dollars in cash, why do these teams keep racing? And why do new teams like Cadillac are fighting to get in? Burning and gambling so much cash for fun doesn't really make any sense. So how do these teams actually make money? As we talked about earlier, their first source of revenue comes from the prize money they get, which doesn't really cover much of it. Their major income comes from sponsorship and brand deals they get. Big brands will spend over 50 to 100 million dollars every single year just to have their biggest logos associated with the F1 team. For example, Oracle pays Red Bull over $100 million annually just to be the title sponsor, while logos at prime position cost about 10 to 30 million dollars and the smaller one cost anywhere between half a million to $5 million. But the real profit doesn't come from the grid or having your logo circle down the circuit at racing speed. It comes from something much deeper, which is the Paddock Club. This is one of the most exclusive VIP club event managed by F1, and this becomes a great event for sponsors and owners to have their business meeting, client interaction, and high level networking. This is highly profitable for B2B companies like Oracle, who doesn't really sell their services to normal people like you and me, but to huge business owners. While $1 million F1 car are getting smashed on the grid, sponsors and owners could be easily making over hundreds of $1 million in sales and deals outside the track. But wait, this isn't the full story. Prior to 2021, F1 teams were never meant to be profitable. It was treated as a huge marketing expense. But after the introduction of budget cap in 2021, every team on the grid has started making in profit. Since then, owning an F1 team has been highly valuable. Today, average valuation of an F1 team has reached $3.6 billion, with the top teams like Ferrari and Mercedes sitting over $6 billion in valuation. Williams Racing, which was acquired for about $200 million in 2020, has now jumped in valuation to a massive $2.5 billion, which is over 1100% return. So, if you were a billionaire, would you still start your own F1 team? What do you think? Comment down below. And if you want to know how BYD turned its image from an international joke to one of the most valuable EV companies on earth, watch this video. I'll see you there. Thank you.